Welcome everyone. I am Aditya Deshmukh. Today's topic is the Cloud Center of Excellence, your navigation system for digital transformation. Welcome. Today, we're diving deep into a crucial aspect of cloud adoption that many organizations overlook, the Cloud Center of Excellence, or CCoE. I'll share real-world stories of companies that got it right, some that learned the hard way, and help you understand why this organizational structure could be the difference between smooth sailing and rough waters in your cloud journey. The promise of a cloud center of excellence. Let's start with what a CCoE brings to the table. Imagine you're planning to build a city from scratch. You wouldn't just let everyone build whatever they want, wherever they want, right? That's essentially what a CCoE does for your cloud infrastructure. The benefits are compelling. First, there's standardization. One of my favorite examples comes from a major financial services company I worked with. Before their CCoE, each department had its own cloud practice. Some teams were using different security protocols, various naming conventions, and inconsistent deployment practices. It was chaos. After establishing their CCoE, they reduced their security incidents by 60% and cut cloud costs by 40% through standardized practices and architecture patterns. Second, there's knowledge sharing. A pharmaceutical company I advised implemented a CCoE that created a central repository of best practices and reusable components. This accelerated their development cycles by 3x because teams weren't reinventing the wheel every time they started a new project. Third, there's governance and cost control. A retail giant saved millions annually by having their CCoE implement FinOps practices and automated cost optimization policies. They could finally answer the age-old question, why is our cloud bill so high? The dark side. When there's no CCoE. Now let's look at the flip side. I've seen organizations struggle without a CCoE, and the stories are cautionary tales. A mid-sized tech company experienced what I call the Wild West syndrome. Every team was creating their own cloud accounts, using different tools, and implementing varying security standards. The result? They suffered a major data breach because one team had misconfigured their cloud storage settings. No central oversight meant no one caught the error until it was too late. Another example is a manufacturing company that ended up with what I call cloud sprawl. Without a CCoE, they accumulated over 200 unused cloud instances across different regions, running up bills for resources nobody was using. It took them 6 months just to identify and clean up the waste. Let us explore some hypothetical scenarios of critical issues when operating without a cloud center of excellence. 1. Runaway cloud costs. A large manufacturing company discovered they were wasting millions annually on unused cloud resources. The issues included over 200 idle instances, 45 terabytes of unattached storage, duplicate services running across departments, a lack of reserved instance purchase tracking, and development environments left running constantly. 2. Security breach. Due to misconfiguration. A mid-sized healthcare provider experienced a data breach that exposed 50,000 patient records. The breach was caused by a lack of standardized security protocols, including inconsistent security settings, unrestricted access controls, inconsistent encryption, public S3 buckets containing sensitive data, and a lack of regular security checks. 3. Shadow IT proliferation. A global financial services firm discovered over 300 unauthorized cloud services in use across the organization. Employees were using personal cloud accounts for business data, and departmental credit cards were used to pay for cloud services. There was no visibility into data location and handling, resulting in compliance violations in multiple regions and duplicate service subscriptions. 4. Compliance violations. A pharmaceutical company faced regulatory action due to several compliance issues. Inconsistent GxP compliance across cloud environments, lack of validation documentation for cloud systems, data residency violations in EU regions, lack of audit trails, and non-compliant backup procedures. 5. Development inefficiency. A software company faced challenges due to disorganization and lack of standardization in their cloud infrastructure. These challenges included each team creating their own cloud infrastructure, no shared code repositories, duplicate development efforts across projects, inconsistent deployment practices, and no standardized CI/CD pipelines. 6. Performance issues. A retail organization experienced multiple outages during peak season due to several shortcomings. These included a lack of standardized architecture patterns, inconsistent monitoring practices, ad hoc scaling solutions, no performance testing standards, and limited disaster recovery capabilities. 7. Knowledge silos. A technology services company experienced several challenges related to cloud knowledge and expertise. These included critical cloud knowledge being concentrated among individual experts, a lack of documentation standards, inconsistent training practices, high dependency on specific team members, and limited knowledge transfer between teams. 8. Vendor lock-in. A media company became overly reliant on one cloud provider because they didn't have a multi-cloud strategy. They didn't consistently use cloud-agnostic tools. They used a lot of provider-specific services. They didn't have standardized migration practices, and they had limited negotiating power. 9. Integration chaos. A telecommunications company faced challenges due to multiple redundant integration patterns, inconsistent API management, lack of a standard for service mesh usage, different messaging systems across teams, and incompatible security models. 10. Technical debt accumulation. The insurance company accumulated technical debt due to inconsistent cloud architecture patterns, multiple versions of similar services, no standardized technology stack, ad hoc solution implementations, and limited documentation. The total average cost of not having a CCoE across these examples is millions of dollars, with an average remediation time of more than a year. The challenges of running a CCoE. Let's be honest though, establishing a CCoE isn't all sunshine and rainbows. There are real challenges to consider. The first is resistance to change. People don't like being told how to do their jobs differently. A healthcare organization I worked with faced significant pushback when their CCoE implemented new security protocols. The solution? They involved key developers in the decision-making process, making them champions rather than critics. There's also the resource investment. A CCoE needs dedicated staff, time, and budget. One company I advised started too big, trying to build a massive CCoE team from day one. They would have been better off starting small and scaling gradually. Finding the right balance. Here's what I've learned. The most successful CCoEs start small but think big. They begin with clear, achievable goals, maybe standardizing security practices or optimizing costs. Then they expand their scope as they prove their value. Take the example of a successful e-commerce company. Their CCoE journey began with just 3 people focused on creating basic cloud governance policies. Within 2 years, they had evolved into a full-fledged center of excellence that was driving innovation across the organization. My closing thoughts. If you're considering whether a CCoE is right for your organization, ask yourself this: can you afford to have different teams reinventing the wheel, potentially making the same mistakes, and possibly exposing your organization to unnecessary risks? In my experience, the question isn't really whether you need a CCoE, but rather how to implement one that fits your organization's size, culture, and goals. Start small, focus on value, and grow organically. Your future self will thank you. That's all for today. Thanks for listening, and remember, in the cloud, excellence isn't an accident. It's a deliberate choice.